Today I'm going to Honest Reporting Canada. They haven't been answering any of my emails, so I think this is the best way to get a comment from them. Maybe if they see how short I am, they'll feel less threatened. My emails can be a bit scary. I'm here at their downtown office. This address that I'm at is still registered as the address for HRC on the Government of Canada website. This building is huge, and there seems to be a bank here and a bunch of other businesses here as well. I really doubt that they're going to let me onto the HRC's floor, but I'm going to try anyways. Okay, let's do this. Alright, I'm at the elevator and I'm gonna see if I can get onto the floor. Oh, it worked. This floor doesn't have a lock sign beside it, which means you can go there. But the elevator says 37 deliveries. So maybe this is just a delivery floor.
Going up.
We're really high up in this elevator and my ears just popped. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not sure if I'm gonna see an office or a person, but I did write out some questions that I did want to ask Mike.
37th floor.
Here we go. I'm seeing an office, a few offices here. A bunch of glass doors and long hallways with carpets. I'm gonna walk around to see if I can see a sign for a room that says Honest Reporting Canada. It's a bit of a maze. I feel like I'm just going in circles. There's a board here for the floor and what offices are here. There's 2 listed here, but I don't see Honest Reporting Canada on this list. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good. I was wondering if you could point me to the direction of where Honest Reporting Canada's office is?
I have no idea.
No?
Honest reporting? Yeah, I don't know. What floor are you supposed to be on?
It's
Yeah,
3710.
We're 3710. This is
Okay.
Davies, Ward, Close, and Vineberg.
Oh, that's so weird. You guys have been here for a while?
For, over 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Then,
That's so weird. Okay, I didn't get this on record, but I just went back in and I asked security. Security guy looked a little intimidating, so I think I forgot to press record. But I did ask them if an organization called Honest Reporting Canada is in this building, but they had no clue what I was talking about. I gave them the exact floor and office number, and they still said they had no idea what I was talking about. They told me to go upstairs and check myself, and I told them that I already did that. They told me I had the wrong address. Worried I had the wrong address, I looked up Davies, Ward, Phillips, and Weinberg after I got home. Turns out, it's a business law firm. It focuses on what it calls high-stakes matters for clients in North America and abroad. We emailed them to ask if Honest Reporting Canada was a client and if it was normal for clients to use their law firm's address on their tax forms. They didn't answer. Then I went back to HRC's Canada Revenue Agency page to double-check the address. I scrolled past an email address that ends with dwpv.ca. It soon clicked to me that that was D for Davis, W for Ward, P for Phillips, and V for Weinberg. So HRC's address on its tax form is that of a law firm. I was at the right place. I need a coffee. Hi, my name is Zara Kazama, and this is There Is a List, an investigative podcast by Ricochet Media that digs into the systematic surveilling and doxing of pro-Palestine voices in Canada. Last week, we looked into Honest Reporting Canada, an organization that doxes journalists. Today, we're getting into who runs it and where they get their money. This episode is called The Charity Loophole. But before we start, I want to take a quick detour to highlight an article I recently read. It was really good. This is rare because passive language in coverage of Palestine or Palestinians always jumps out at me. This piece in the Globe and Mail, though, I thought it was good. It was about Palestinian chef Sami Tamimi and his new book. The reporter wrote that Tamimi used his platforms to call attention to the devastation in Gaza, particularly the forced starvation. Finally, I thought, we're calling this what it is, a forced starvation. Dozens of international aid groups and humanitarian organizations have confirmed a mass starvation in Gaza. Israel has barred international aid from entering the enclave, leading to a well-planned and engineered starvation of over 2 million people. Most recent numbers show that Israel has killed more than 186,000 Palestinians since October 7th. Some researchers say that number could be as high as 680,000 people. When I checked back on the chef article a few days later, the mention of forced starvation was deleted, and a note about a change was posted under. It said that a previous version of this article included an inaccurate description of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The restriction of aid to the region and other factors have caused widespread famine. A few days after that, HRC published a success post on its website, gloating about the change it influenced. When I reached out to the Globe and Mail's standards editor about a change in this particular article and requested an interview regarding their relationship with Honest Reporting Canada, she said that the Globe does not respond to pressure from advocacy groups and that corrections are guided by the Globe's editorial code of conduct and internal guidance for coverage.
Honest Reporting started off in the UK, and then it moved into the US, and now it's here in Canada. And these three locations really work in tandem together. Honest Reporting also does do work, jumps off of work that the Canary Mission does. It basically targets and puts a back on journalists. And it's not just journalists they go after, they also go after academics. Anyone who is doing research or is reporting on Israel in a way that doesn't regurgitate Israeli government talking points. That is their modus operandi.
You remember Samira, right? She's the ex-CBC journalist HRC loves to target. Samira also has a master's degree in modern Middle Eastern history from the University of Toronto. We first heard from her in episode 3. She's talking to me about how HRC operates.
They function as a massive charity. They give charitable tax breaks. They operate with hundreds of thousands of dollars a year of funding. Particularly in the last 2 years, funding has been very good.
Samira knows what she's talking about. She's been tracking Honest Reporting Canada for a while. Even though the group's been around since the early 2000s, it became a registered charity in 2019. Since then, its revenue, expenses, and assets have all grown exponentially. According to public tax records, HRC pulled in $3.8 million between 2020 and 2023. Most of the donations came from individuals who got tax receipts or grants from other charities. More than half of HRC's total revenue, that's almost $2 million, came in 2023, the year the war on Gaza began. For comparison, their 2022 revenue was $880,000, out of which over 80% came from individuals. In case you're wondering why I'm bombarding you with numbers, here's why. Any individual who donates to a registered charity gets federal and provincial tax credits. On average, it amounts to 40% on donations above $200 in Ontario. So, say someone donated $1,000 to HRC. The government would subsidize $400. This means that after credits, the individual is paying $600 out of their original $1,000 donation, and the public is covering the rest. The filings also show how the money is spent. HRC allocated nearly $69,000 on office supplies and $180,000 on advertising and promotion in 2023 alone. Now that we've established they don't actually have an address where they say they do, I wonder where this amount is used. Anyways, the charity employs 4 full-time staff members, and one of them makes between $200,000 and $250,000 a year. So, who's actually sending them money? Donations from individuals are kept private. But when one charity gives to another, that information is public. A human rights organization known as Just Peace Advocates obtained the CRA's records of charities supporting HRC, and the list includes private family foundations and Jewish philanthropic organizations. The Maples Davide Mastrossi published an extensive investigation into the people and organizations behind HRC in 2024 in a 2-part series. Here's some of what he found. One of the biggest donations comes from the Israeli Foundation. The Israelis are a billionaire family. Their real estate company, the Israeli Group, describes itself as Israel's largest publicly traded real estate firm. It's given close to $25,000 a year to HRC since the group gained charity status. Another notable donor is the Asper Foundation. The foundation was set up by Israel Asper, who also founded CanWest Global Communications. At its peak, CanWest owned more than 130 newspapers across Canada, including the National Post, the Calgary Herald, the Montreal Gazette, and the Vancouver Sun. 16 years ago, CanWest sold that newspaper empire for over $1 billion to a group that would become Post Media. And for more than a decade before that sale, CanWest was run by Asper's son, Leonard, which means the director of a foundation donating to Honest Reporting Canada, a group lobbying for pro-Israel media coverage, was also once in charge of the largest newspaper chain in the country. It gave HRC $10,000 in both 2021 and 2022. Another donor is the Peter and Melanie Monk Charitable Foundation, which was started by the Monk family, the same family whose donation made the Monk School of Global Affairs at the University of Toronto possible. In total, the Monk Foundation made a $2,000 donation to HRC. The late Peter Monk made his fortune by building the world's largest gold mining company, notorious for human rights violations in countries like Papua New Guinea. The Rotman Family Foundation is also on the list. It made a $12,500 donation to HRC in 2020. If the name sounds familiar, it's because the same family is the benefactor of U of T's Rotman School of Management. Ken Rotman, a member of the family, is also one of HRC's directors. His father, Joseph, who died in 2015, was described as a proud Canadian and supporter of Israel, according to his obituary in the National Post. Now let's talk about the people behind HRC. Aside from Ken Rotman, the charity lists Jonas Prince as an active director. Prince is the co-founder of RealStart, a real estate investment and management company that manages billions in assets and is the owner-operator of more than 25,000 rental units in Canada alone. The last of the directors is Daniel Greenglass, who joined HRC's charity board in 2020. The Globe and Mail cites Greenglass as a CFO and co-managing partner of Brennan Custom Homes, Inc. The company's website says that it has designed and built hundreds of custom homes ranging in price from $5 million to over $50 million in Canada, the US, and the Bahamas. In 2011, Greenglass and his partner bought an island on the St. Lawrence River and built a 4,800 square foot house on it. Greenglass is also listed as a Senate member of the UHN Foundation. That's the University Health Network, a research hospital fully affiliated with the University of Toronto. The more I dug through these names, the clearer I saw a common denominator. The Monks, the Rotmans, Greenglass, they all intersect at U of T. It doesn't prove influence, but it does raise questions about proximity, and it reminded me of what Calliope told us in our first episode about her experience negotiating with the university.
I would say that my feeling on the negotiations is a feeling of disappointment. What we did was we went in with 3 very clear demands, and the university spent 2 months trying to weasel their way out of actually giving them to us. For example, for divestment, what we wanted was a guarantee that if there was going to be a process, that at the end of the process, there was going to be divestment from Israel. And what they gave us was their regurgitating their existing policy on divestment, which is basically they promise to look into their investments, to examine their investments, and then if they decide that they actually do breach their standards on human rights, then they would consider divesting from them. So what we told them very clearly was there is no need for all of this process, all of this bureaucracy. If you really wanted to divest from Israel, you would do it right now, right here. And yeah, basically they just...
A U of T spokesperson said that the university's divestment policy outlines the formal process for submitting a divestment request. Under it, successful efforts in the past, including those related to South Africa, tobacco, and fossil fuels, have gone through this process. University members can initiate a request by submitting a detailed brief and signatures from at least 300 members. Hey, it's me again. You're listening to There's the List, an investigative podcast from Ricochet Media. Reporting on stories like this is only possible because of listener support. Ricochet is an independent, non-profit newsroom. We don't have corporate support or billionaire backing, which means we can dig into powerful institutions and ask questions others won't. If you value in-depth reporting on how Palestinian voices in Canada are being targeted, and you want to see more independent journalism like this, please consider supporting us. Even a few dollars a month makes a difference. Head to ricochet.media/donate. That's ricochet.media/donate to become a monthly supporter today. Now let's talk about the man of the hour, HRC's Executive Director, Mike Figelman. Instead of me going on about how Figelman found himself at HRC, I'll let you hear the story from him. These are clips from an interview he did in 2021.
At the start of my career, I didn't know a lot about Israel. And I didn't know a lot about Judaism. I didn't know a lot about Jewish ancestral claims to the Holy Land. But I found I had a newfound passion to Israel. And I was able to merge my talents with journalism and my newfound passion with Israel. And actually, I came to Honest Reporting originally as a volunteer. I was walking in Jerusalem and I saw a sign in the garbage that said, "Help fight media bias against Israel, join Honest Reporting." And I contacted the local office, said I'd be happy to volunteer, and was hired the next day as one of the founding directors. And it's been a wild ride.
What was this Canadian doing in Israel, you ask? He was on Birthrights, a free trip to Israel for young Jews around the world, despite their lack of ancestry to the land. Within days of returning, he landed a job with HRC. In a fundraising email, the Maple found that Figelman described HRC as Israel's sword and shield, complete with a war room to fight what he called the battle for public opinion.
Anything and everything, we digest everything that the Canadian media produces 24/7. It takes a Herculean effort to do it, and we monitor the content. And I should say that added layer of editorial oversight that we provide to the media is greatly appreciated by our newsmakers in a world of cutbacks where they don't have that editorial oversight. So, some people might think that the relationship is antagonistic. It's actually quite cooperative and complementary.
We have people in this country funding this outlet to target journalists. That's a systemic problem within our media landscape. However, Canadian media outlets still treat this organization as some sort of good faith actor when they're not. They are a nefarious organization that targets Canadian journalists.
HRC's assistant director is Robert Walker. His LinkedIn shows that he once worked in the comms department at Israel's embassy in Ottawa. But last year, he made the headlines for a different reason. He faced 17 criminal charges for allegedly spray painting anti-Palestinian graffiti on properties in a Toronto neighborhood. Court documents describe stencils reading "Fuck Gaza." Those charges were withdrawn this March after Walker agreed to make a $1,000 donation to the Sick Kids Foundation. In a statement to the Toronto Star, his lawyer stressed that the case shouldn't be used as an excuse to harass or intimidate her client. I couldn't help but notice the irony. Most mainstream outlets did not cover the story.
Why wouldn't the CBC look at this? Right? Why wouldn't the CBC look at the fact that the organization that they, respond to all the time, to their letters and stuff, is actually going around a Toronto neighborhood writing "fuck Gaza." I mean, that is a huge story.
But it doesn't end there. HRC also has a foothold on campuses. They've partnered with another Zionist charity to offer a 6-month media watchdog for Israel fellowship for students.
And so they give students $1,000 to operate basically as stagi on Canadian campuses, to report on their professors and to report on students and student groups that don't toe the Israeli narrative on campus.
Davide found that successful candidates attend workshops, monitor campus media, and respond to coverage deemed to be problematic. They also proactively submit opinion pieces and press releases to steer the conversation about Israel and share pro-Israel content. A total of 49 students from over a dozen universities across the country were accepted to the program in 2023 and 2024. This kind of reminded me of what Cheryl from Independent Jewish Voices was talking about happening on university campuses.
One of the things that happens in classrooms, for example, is that Hillel and other organizations actually place students in the classes of some of these folks to monitor them, and they will record. So a couple of the stories in the report are that a professor was monitored, and then the student went straight to Hillel to make a complaint, who then went to the associate dean or whoever was in charge, or the chair of the department, and then that professor gets hauled into the dean's office to be told that they better behave better. So you have things like that happening all the time. This sort of, kind of surreptitious surveillance of professors by students, which is a bit scary. It's very 1984-ish.
For anybody to say they are not biased against Israel means they don't have a brain, as far as I'm concerned. I am definitely biased against Israel, 100 million%. In the same fashion that I was biased against apartheid South Africa, that I was biased against the Khmer Rouge and what they were doing in Cambodia, I have biases against genocidaires. That is never going to go away.
So, we've covered where Zionist organizations in Canada, like the HRC, get their money from. But what about those not based here? What about nonprofits in Israel like Megamat Shalom, the company allegedly behind Canary Mission? Almost the entirety of its funds come from abroad. How are the big philanthropists and charity foundations getting their funds across the ocean to them?
Okay, my name is Miles Howe. I have a PhD from Queen's University.
Miles teaches at the Sociology and Criminology Department at Brock University. He specializes in Zionist philanthropy.
Zionist philanthropy to me means money moving from Canada to Israel in adherence with the principles that Israel should exist as a Jewish ethno-state with all the violence and mass displacement that has meant over the past 100 years.
He says one of the ways that this is done is through charities. Charities in Canada can trace their roots back to the colonial era, when churches and religious groups first organized to provide relief for the poor, sick, and the elderly. It wasn't until 1967 that the federal government set up a system through the Canada Revenue Agency to officially register charities under 4 categories: the relief of poverty, the advancement of education, a religious purpose, or some other purpose that benefits a significant segment of a community. HRC, for example, is registered under the education category. Today, there are over 86,000 registered charities in Canada.
As you can probably empathize with, these are very archaic and in a realm where increasingly monitoring, enforcement, and regulation of the charitable sector in Canada appears something of the equivalent of the Wild West, where money talks, even baseline reporting requirements are frequently not even done by numerous charities. These 4 categories are essentially meaningless.
But charitable status is still powerful. It lets organizations issue tax receipts for donations. So when an individual donates money, they get a credit worth at least a third of that amount back from the government. In other words, donations are partly subsidized by the Canadian public. And it's not just individuals. Other registered charities, often big public or private foundations, can also funnel money their way.
And these importantly act as tax havens. The money kept in these public and private foundations is not taxable. And so the only thing that one must do in order to maintain a public or private foundation in good standing with the Canadian Revenue Agency, or the Canada Revenue Agency rather, is to meet your disbursement quota, which exists usually at about 5%. Once after the first $1 million that you hold in assets. And so it's important that way to be able to offer that service to these vast pools of money that exist, in essence, outside of the Canadian public economy as tax shelters.
What Miles is saying is that once a foundation has more than $1 million, it only needs to donate around 5% of that each year to stay in good standing with the CRA. The rest can just sit there, growing tax-free. But charities can lose their status. 2 big Zionist charities recently lost their status due to failed audits. One of them was the Naaman Foundation.
So Naaman Foundation is an interesting one. It operated very briefly. It operated as what I would term a classic burner charity, insofar as it appeared to exist as something of a shell. Now, Naaman offered up a Canadian version of a website where one could pick and choose from a variety of Israeli charities, and for that service you could donate off of the Naaman website, and Naaman would issue you a Canadian tax receipt for directly moving money to an Israeli charity, which had no Canadian charitable status.
In 2024, the CRA revoked Naaman's status after uncovering multiple violations. Through research, Miles found that Naaman was funneling money into illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank and even into private companies of his operator, Chaim Katz, who lived in one of those settlements.
Upwards of about 40%, I believe, of the money was coming from large-scale donors. Specifically, an individual who's named Albert Friedberg and his Friedberg Charitable Foundation.
Between 2011 and 2021, Canadian billionaire Albert Friedberg donated $54 million to Canadian charities funneling money into Israel, whose statuses were subsequently revoked for contraventions of the Income Tax Act.
And here we're talking about a Zionist billionaire who most definitely, or I would say, with 99.99% assurity, is not using the website, is not one day just clicking on a website going like, I think it would be a great idea to donate X number of millions of dollars to this charity. I'm going to use Naaman's front-facing platform. And so what is this thing? And so for every dollar that you can trace going to, in this case, illegal settlements or the Israeli offensive forces, there's multiple dollars that you have no idea where it's even going.
But one thing is clear. A lot of money is going to Israel.
What's important to note on that, though, is that Israel consistently is either the number one and possibly second at times recipient of Canadian charitable donations.
A 2023 Access to Information received by Just Peace advocates indicated that over $10.5 billion of Canadian tax-subsidized charitable funds have gone to other countries over the past 5 years. At a 30% tax rate, this is more than a $3 billion subsidy by the Canadian taxpayer.
And so we're talking also about a very small country with a very small population compared to nations of size across the world, with a GDP also on par or above that of Canada.
Miles is specifically talking about GDP per capita. In 2024, Canada's GDP per capita was $54.4 thousand, while Israel's was at $54.1.
These are not populations necessarily in need, in comparison to the rest of the world, of charitable donations. This is a country that, at least on paper, presents itself as doing better financially on a individual by individual basis than is Canada.
So what exactly is being funded?
It goes all over the map, from money funding expansion in illegal settlements, money funding intermediaries focused on Palestinian displacement and erasure, money moving to material and financial support to the Israeli military.
Miles argues that in this context, no charitable dollar sent to Israel can be considered neutral.
Israel is undertaking a genocide right now in contravention of international law. The analogy I would suggest is that every dollar that we at the moment send to Israel that even goes to the most charitable purpose one might imagine, right? An orphanage, say, is a dollar that the state of Israel does not need to expend in maintenance of its own orphans, right? And that dollar can subsequently be rerouted to purchase more shells and more ammunition. At very last, it may well be that no dollars going to Israel at this moment are charitable.
And where does Honest Reporting Canada fall into all of this?
So certainly if you read a few of these things and you're already in the Zionist mindset, and that's really where you're going to get your news, then certainly it reaffirms your belief, and then you just keep quiet and you keep re-injecting your own charitable donations, whatever those might be, back into that Zionist charitable system in Canada, which is vast, by the way. But Honest Reporting Canada, where I think it really flourishes, especially with the CBC, is whenever a complaint is filed with the CBC, it has to go to an ombudsperson, right? Dear so-and-so at the CBC, I found this example. And then the CBC is required to investigate that. And so what they've done is they simply begin to tie up people hours that the CBC is by default required to go investigate a story and blah, blah, blah. It simply becomes unsavory from a simple how many people hours you have to report on Palestine.
In 2024, members of Just Peace Advocates and Writers Against the War in Gaza Toronto submitted a formal complaint to the CRA requesting an audit of HRC on the basis that its activities could be violating Canadian law. We have no update on this as of yet. We reached out to the Israeli Foundation for a comment about their funding of Honest Reporting Canada. A spokesperson said that the foundation is apolitical and immensely proud of the impact their work has made across Canada and Israel. They also said that the foundation's giving strategy prioritizes fostering positive and lasting impacts for individuals and communities. Ricochet did not hear back from the Asper Foundation, the Peter and Melanie Monk Foundation, the Rotman Family Foundation, Ken Rotman, Daniel Greenglass, Mike Figelman, Robert Walker, and the Naaman Foundation or the Albert Friedberg Foundation. The CBC also did not return any of our emails. This episode was updated on October 17, 2025. In this updated version, we've added clarification that U of T denies indication that any donor or HRC board member has influenced the university's response to the 2024 encampments. We've also included details about U of T's divestment policy and removed some portions of Calliope's interview. Next time on There's a List, someone from an organization called Reverse Canary Mission joins us. And we hear from a Canadian doctor who served in Gaza and joined the fight for Palestinian liberation.
And I think the difference between them and us is we have something we stand on. Like, we're backed by the core principles of Palestinian liberation.
And I really wanted the calls to action to not just be, oh, speak up, right? Like, of course it's important to speak up, but like organize for concrete actions that materially help move the dial towards Palestinian liberation.
There is a list. This list, in Arabic, this list says we are in an operation. The operation against Israel started in the 7th of October. This is a guardian list where every terrorist writes his name and every terrorist has his own shift guarding the people that were here.
There is a List is written and produced by me, Zara Kazema, and published by Ricochet Media. My editor is Andrea Houston. The executive producer is Ethan Cox. Jawad Al-Bidawi is the technical producer. Sarwa Abdul made the gorgeous cover and episode art. This podcast has been made possible through the generous support of Journalists for Human Rights. A huge thanks to Samira and Miles for speaking with me, and to the Maple for his extensive investigation into Honest Reporting Canada. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.